Hi, everybody. It's time to be science literate. My name is Andy Epton, and today I'm going to be talking about herd immunity. There's been some troubling information coming out of the White House these days, and it's really bad information. So I thought I would address that here today in our second episode of Be Science Literate. So the information coming out of the White House is that the some of the top advisors or officials in the White House are advising that or recommending that the nation tries to build up a herd immunity for the SARS-CoV-2 virus or COVID-19, the disease caused by SARS-CoV-2. This is troubling on many, many levels. The reasoning, I guess, behind trying to build up herd immunity is that we could just go about business as usual and not really worry about social distancing or mask mandates or smaller group sizes and things of that nature. And so we go back to the way things were before February of 2020 when the pandemic really kind of started blowing wide open here in America. The thing is, though, that reality is very dangerous. The idea that we could go back to the way things were is not possible simply because, one, we've had millions of people infected already by this virus around the world. But even in this country, we've had millions of people infected with the virus. And while 210 plus thousand people have died, that leaves millions of people recovered. Those people that recover aren't exactly 100% healthy. A good number of them are still suffering lingering effects from the virus. So, to insist or to recommend that the entire country essentially get the virus, hoping that a large number will survive, as it will, and not have major complications, is irresponsible, unethical, immoral. Just you put your bad connotation there because this is not the way things should be done. Um, Doctors, are supposed to do no harm. Well, purposefully infecting or recommending the infection of the entire country to somehow go about business or life as usual is not the way to do it because life will not be the same. We've already lost 210 plus thousand people 7 months into this pandemic here in our country alone. The families of those people will never experience life as usual. They will never go back to the way things were prior to the pandemic. Because even if they lost a loved one who, say, had cancer or had some underlying disease or cause of death, the pandemic, the disease, COVID 19, exacerbated or accelerated the suffering and the eventual demise of those particular people. So we cannot go back to the way things were. We cannot go back to life as usual. We cannot continue on and pretend like this is just some fluke or a small disease that doesn't really hurt anybody. So if you hear crunching in the background, that's my rabbit. She's decided to now would be a great time to eat her little chew stick rice puff thing. So just bear that in mind. So herd immunity, what is it? How can we achieve it? Can we achieve it? Herd immunity is a concept that protects those that cannot be immunized. Let's say, with a vaccine. Okay, so small children, babies, the elderly, infirm, people with immunocompromised systems, people who have HIV, or people who have immune systems that attack them, attack its own body. Those people cannot receive vaccines, or, some of those people can't receive vaccines. So they rely on the vast majority of the rest of us to become immunized, immune from these diseases. And that way, if somebody were to, say, come into the country or develop this particular disease, it would be buffered by those of us who are immune from getting to those who cannot be immune, and they're safe. That that's a huge societal responsibility. We need to be protected against various diseases in order to protect others that cannot be protected. We serve as their vaccine in a way. And those of us who are healthy, who are strong, who have no, internal issues with our immune systems, there's no reason why we cannot become immune. There's no reason why we cannot get vaccinated for things like measles or flu or diphtheria or you name it. There's no reason for it. So we are the ones that serve as that buffer. We're the ones who serve as that shield for those that cannot be vaccinated, cannot become immune. So, how many people need to be immune in order for this to work? It varies. It varies depending on the disease. It varies depending on the infectiousness of the disease. It varies depending on the severity of the disease. Um, some require almost 100% vaccination or immunity in order for herd immunity to be effective. For instance, measles. Measles is one of the most infectious diseases known. It can linger in rooms for hours. So somebody that is in a room who's infected can cough or sneeze or whatever, leave that virus on the surface in that room or even in the air, leave that room, and hours later, somebody who's not immune can come in and get infected with measles. They don't even have to come into contact. They don't even have to be near the person who had the virus. Measles is devious and incredibly infectious. It requires about 97% of the populace to be immune in order for herd immunity to actually work. If that number falls below the herd immunity threshold, sorry, then measles can be incredibly contagious and take people that, again, cannot be vaccinated or cannot be protected against this virus. So we need to maintain our measles. We need or measles vaccination. We need to maintain that herd immunity. Flu, flu only requires about 33 to 44%, give or take, depending on the flu virus, depending on the strain, depending on the infectiousness of that particular strain. But it's well below half the population needs to be immune from or vaccinated against the flu virus in order to maintain herd immunity. That's because the flu virus does mutate quite rapidly. That's because certain strains are not as infectious as other strains, and honestly, the flu in most cases is not a death sentence. We have medicines that can help protect or at least help treat these particular viruses. But we still need herd immunity because there are those that cannot get sick. They cannot risk getting sick. A simple cold or a flu that normal people or healthy people would catch and be kind of laid up for a couple of days and then they recover might kill these people who are again immunocompromised or uh, otherwise cannot receive vaccines. And again, babies are in this category as well. So if you are constantly preaching, or sorry, preaching is not the best word there, but if you're constantly advocating for life and pro-life and this, that, and the other, then vaccinations will help that case because that protects those babies once they're born because their immune systems are not capable of withstanding the onslaught of various diseases. That's why after a few weeks they are vaccinated to help their bodies get to that point. So we need herd immunity. Now, the problem with the COVID-19 or SARS-CoV-2 is that we don't honestly know how much of the population is required to be immune before we have herd immunity. So, in order for us to achieve herd immunity, let's say it requires 60%. 60% of the people would have to become immune in order to, again, achieve herd immunity. Well, right now we don't have a vaccination. We need 60% of the populace, be it here in America or the globe, in order to maintain or at least achieve herd immunity. That's just an estimate. It might not be 60%, it might be higher. We don't honestly know. We're basing it on our rates of flu, but this isn't the flu. This is a coronavirus. The flu is a completely different virus. So we can't just go, well, the flu is this, so we need that. No, no, this is a different virus. We require higher rates because it's a deadlier virus. It's more contagious than the flu. So we need a higher herd immunity threshold. So if it is 60%, I think that's a low ballpark figure. We need 60% of the populace. There are 330 million people in our country alone. 60% is, let's see, rough estimate, about 180 million people. That's 180 million people would have to be immune in order to achieve herd immunity. Okay, so we need to become immune. We don't have a vaccine yet, so how do we become immune? We have to catch the virus. We have to survive the virus. Then maybe we're immune. That hasn't been shown to be proved yet, or it hasn't been proven yet, that those of us or those that have gotten the virus are immune from the virus. There have been cases, now these are just isolated incidents, but they are troubling, of people becoming reinfected with the virus. If that's the case, then immunity may not be just catching the virus and surviving. You may have to catch it more than once and survive more than once. Or maybe there is no maybe there is no immunity. Maybe the virus mutates so fast that we can't actually build up an immunity, similar to the flu virus. The flu virus mutates so rapidly that we need a flu vaccine every single year because we can never become immune to the flu. It's always coming at us in a different manner, and so we need to protect ourselves against it. But back to COVID-19. Again, there is no vaccine for this. We need to become infected. The mortality rate for by cases is about 3%. So if 180 million people catch the virus, 3% will die. That's over 3 million people. That's what, 5 million people? So, give or take, that's a ridiculously large number of people. And that's just 60% of the population, 3% of that. Who knows of the 40% that, you know, aren't part of that herd immunity group? Who knows what they're going to be, what's going to happen to them. So again, we need about 60% of the population to become infected and survive. So we need more than 180 million people to catch the virus in order to achieve that 60%. And again, survive. But based on current cases, that's not a guarantee that when you do survive that you'll be fine. A few people, actually a lot of people, have gotten lucky, but we're still kind of in the early stages of this. We don't know what the long-term effects necessarily are. Some people are having heart complications. Some people are having breathing complications. Some people are having organ failure. Um, just all sorts of issues coming from this particular virus. It seems to settle in the lungs and then from there attack pretty much the entire body. We have no idea right now of the long-term effects of this particular virus. You may survive, but years from now be more at risk of other particular contagions. We just don't know. It's still too early. We're only 7 months into this particular virus or this pandemic here in this country, less than a full year into this pandemic as a planet. We have no idea what the long-term ramifications are of this virus. So for the White House, um, and not just them. There was a conference held at some sort of medical and economic forum, and there were lots of doctors and economists and professors that signed on to a petition or a document that basically calls for business as usual. Open everything back up. Let's get our lives back to the way they were before the pandemic started. Because again, 3% of the people who catch it die. That's a small number. Of the entire population, it's something along the lines of what, point 0.6, 0.06, something around there percent of the total population um, have have died or will die as a result of this particular disease. But that's with um, these precautions in place. That's with social distancing. That's with mask wearing. That's with hand washing and crowd size limitations. If we went back to the way things were, where we weren't wearing masks, where we weren't washing our hands, religiously almost, manically, if we went back to going to restaurants and filling the places up and basically standing in line right behind the person in front of you, where you're breathing on the back of their neck, if we go back to that world, if we go back to the way things were, this pandemic is going to explode once again, and the mortality rate is going to be more than 3%. The infection rate is going to be more than what it currently is. Again, we've only had 7 million people, a little over 7 million people in our country catch the virus. The government, well, certain members of our government want 180 million people thereabouts to catch this virus. They see nothing wrong. They see the dollar signs of a short term economic recession or economic downturn because, yes, we are experiencing that. Businesses have had to close. And, that's terrible. That's absolutely terrible. But you know what? Those people get to live. Those people get to find another job somewhere, someday, sometime, start up their businesses again because they're still alive. The 210 plus thousand people in our country that don't get a chance to do that. They don't get a chance to go shopping. They don't get a chance to even go to work. They don't get a chance to wake up for another day. And that number is just going to keep increasing because we are seeing surges again. We're entering quote unquote flu season. Flu season is basically a time of year when flu, kind of spikes. That's why we get our flu shots around this time of year. By the way, get your flu shot. I personally have not yet had my flu shot, but I am definitely on my way to getting it sometime within the next few days. I have to find a really good time to do that based on my family's schedule and my schedule. The reason we call this flu season is because it's getting colder. People are starting to congregate indoors in and that's a great way for the flu to spread. But if we're wearing our masks, if we're socially distancing, if we're staying at home as much as possible, then the flu won't be as big of a factor this year as it has been in the past. Because the protections against the coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2, are very effective against the flu because there's nowhere for it to go. It spreads very similarly to SARS-CoV-2. So we're going to see spikes. We're going to see spikes. Why? Because there are people who are adamant about being done with this. They're tired of being locked up inside. They're tired of wearing their masks. They're tired of being told what to do. The problem is that's what's keeping them alive. That's what's keeping them safe. But they're changing things. I live in Michigan, and Michigan just recently saw a political ideology triumph over sound science and medical advice. Our governor, Governor Gretchen Whitmer, had issued executive orders and used the emergency powers given to her by the Constitution of Michigan and her position as governor to issue certain orders such as mandate masking and kind of quarantine at the beginning of the pandemic. However, the way the law was written, she only could do that for 28 days. After that, if she wanted to extend it, she would have to get permission or at least run it by the legislature. And they would have to actually pass a law mandating masks and so forth. The problem is the ideology of the majority in the legislature was one that has been consistently playing down the severity of this pandemic. They want to see things open back up. So Whitmer unconstitutionally extended her executive orders. And only recently did the state Supreme Court, thanks to some very intrepid lawyers who are obviously happy about their results, but are putting people in harm's way, sued, and they won. It went to the state Supreme Court, and through again a politically ideological majority, that side won. And so her executive orders were struck down, which means that technically, legally, businesses can only mandate masks if they choose to do so. They can make their own policy. They're a private business. However, with the mask mandate by the governor, they were actually kind of had a shield or protection against angry customers or belligerency. People upset that they had to wear a mask, and the businesses could hold their hands up and go, "Hey, this is from the governor, not from us." But they can't do that anymore. And there are a lot of people who are very upset about being forced to wear masks. They claim it's their right not to do so. And I am not sure. I've never read the Constitution word for word, but I'm fairly familiar with it and am quite certain that there is no right in there that puts public health in danger. And this puts public health in danger. Wisconsin is a case study, and it's basically the future of what Michigan is going to be, and potentially the future of what other states in our country are going to be. Wisconsin is running out of hospital beds. They're setting up field hospitals to tend to the sick and the infirm that are coming down with COVID-19 because they're seeing surges. They're seeing spikes like nobody else has seen, unless they're a way more populous states such as Texas or California. So Wisconsin is what Michigan is going to be, because right now we're just starting this demasking, if you will, or unmasking. We're starting this de-escalation of the protections for COVID-19. And there are those that are going to say that this is part of the herd immunity theory. No, this is dangerous. Lots of people are going to die from this. Lots of people are going to get sick. This pandemic is not over. This pandemic has no cares whether you believe in certain politics, whether you want businesses to operate as usual, whether you want to see your family or not. It really doesn't care because it's technically not alive. It's a virus. This virus only is looking for a warm cell to reproduce in, and that could be in you. That could be in me. Luckily, so far, I've been okay. But my school has not opened back up yet. We are scheduled to have some talks about possibly opening up and going face to face in the near future. Hopefully, thanks to the spiking of and the surges of various areas, that we will make the smart decision and stay virtual. My son is scheduled to go back to school next week. This being mid October, he's going to go back late October. He's scheduled to go back face to face. Some students in his school, some younger students, are already back to get them, kind of acclimated to school life. The kindergartners and first graders and so forth. They've already had a case. They've only been back for a few days, and they've already had a case at that school. People close to me going to school face to face have seen cases pop up. I have colleagues in other states. They've seen cases, just outbreaks in their schools. Dozens of kids coming down with COVID-19. This is not safe. Our schools are not an experiment. They're not a petri dish, nor should they be a petri dish. We don't need to endanger the lives of those most vulnerable. So the herd immunity aspect of things is dangerous. It's not ideal. People are going to get sick. People are going to die. And we can't do this. We can't do this to our country. We can't do this to the people that are most at risk, such as, again, even though young people seem to be relatively safe, They can pass it on to grandparents. They can pass it on to their parents. They can pass it on to anybody. So bringing them back to school is a dangerous idea. We've already seen that this virus really spreads through things called super spreader events. Most of us will not get it from just daily contact, but there are areas where the virus seems to kind of spike and spread to large numbers of people. Those are called super spreader events. We saw one recently with what happened with the president and the first lady and members of his staff. It was a super spreader event. It infected many, many people in one single event. This is going to happen. Schools could very well serve as super spreader origins or bases. So we don't want this to happen. But I understand. Parents are fed up. Parents are tired. We want our kids to have a normal life. But let's face it, this isn't normal. Nothing about this is normal. You can't pretend that just by going to, sending your loved one, your little one off to school with a mask and hand sanitizer and instructions not to touch anybody is normal. There's nothing normal about that. Not for the littlest and not for the oldest. There's nothing normal. This is one of the biggest pandemics that we've ever dealt with. We're in the midst of it. And medical science is giving us as much information as possible. The problem is, it takes time. It takes time to figure out how to fight this. It takes time to build a vaccine. It takes time to get that vaccine for where it's safe and effective and get it out to the populace. We may be dealing with this for months. This isn't normal. It's not a new normal, but it's definitely not normal. So we just have to make the best of what we've got. We cannot force the issue. We can't pretend like it's not going to hurt us because it can and it will. So, herd immunity, bad idea. All right, that's all for me today. Thank you for joining me. And again, I want everybody to be science literate because it could save your life. All right, thanks. Have a good day.